Hey guys, my name is Nicholas Acevedo, and this is my first ever Yu-Gi-Oh vlog. Now, I got into Yu-Gi-Oh just like everybody else. Everybody loved the original anime with Yami Yugi, Joey, all of those characters, Blue Eyes, White Dragon, Dark Magician, my Juice and Jam. Those are some of my favorite cards early on, but I didn't really get into Yu-Gi-Oh until I saw Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is definitely my favorite of the anime series. It has Yusei, and I love the junk archetype, especially with the new mechanic that show had introduced with synchro summoning. It feels so powerful to synchro summon monsters like Stardust Dragonow. Now I have kind of turned over a new leaf, and I wanted to learn the card game. Originally, when I first got into the card game was when I was very little. My parents had rented out the Rainforest Cafe for one of my birthdays, and they had bought a big box of like a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh! Starter decks. Of course, I was super excited, and I picked the starter deck, which had the closest looking thing to the Dark Magician. He's actually in the starter deck. I'm gonna put it here somewhere, but I was super excited about Yu-Gi-Oh! And I wanted to learn how to play the game right away. And of course, I opened up the box, I tried to read the rules, and I didn't know how to play. And neither did any of my other friends, so we just had a good time pretending like we knew how to summon cards and do all of this other stuff. Flash forward now, I am out of college. I started looking into the game when I was in college. I started buying out decks and buying cards and collecting things. It was kind of weird because, you know, now we have like Logan Paul and we have like Critical, who are really big into collecting cards and like talking about cards and like showing off. I know Logan Paul had like the Charizard chain, that was crazy. Card games have gotten a lot more expensive. They've become a lot harder to get into. And that's kind of what this vlog is going to be about. We're going to talk a little bit about the game, and we're going to, you know, try to become a little bit more competitive. My goal is to become the king of games, and I will become the king of games. I promise you, but probably not right now. The deck that I'm running right here, also shout out to these Boulder cases, Ultimate Guard. These are so nice, and they're really inexpensive. I think this one was like $6 or $7. It was crazy cheap. But I'm playing Pendulums right now. It's one of the newer Yu-Gi-Oh! Archetypes. It was introduced in the anime series Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V. It's the main character Yugioh's deck of choice. He plays Performapal and Magicians. But it was supposed to be kind of a reference to the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series with the way that Yugi had his main, you know, Dark Magician. They're all supposed to pay kind of tribute to the original. Astrograph and Chronograph kind of looking the closest to the original, like Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl. But, you know, this deck is a little bit out of time. It's definitely not as meta relevant as it should be. But, you know, it's still a fun deck. It's still a really cool deck, and it can still pull off a lot of things. It just has a lot of weaknesses in the current format, and a lot of these cards haven't been banned or haven't been limited yet. We'll talk about that a little bit later, which makes this deck a lot harder to use. Going into the next few formats, the deck that I want to play mostly is Splight's Frogs. I had been interested in the frog stuff a long time ago. Right when I picked up the game, frogs had been like a meta for a while, but when they banned Totally Awesome, the deck kind of like lost play entirely. Like the deck was pretty much done for. People stopped playing it altogether. But now it's coming back. Splites have introduced new life into the deck, and so that's the deck that I want to start playing competitively. I started picking out the cards now. I bought out all the hand traps. We'll talk about hand traps probably in a later episode, but right now that's the deck of choice that I'm going into. But Splites haven't come out yet. We're waiting on Power of Elements, the next big Yu-Gi-Oh! Set to come out to really shape and change the meta. So let's talk about the deck a little bit. Hey guys, I'm back with the deck list that I'm going to be running at the locals tomorrow. This deck list comes in from El Exordio del Duelista. They are a Spanish YouTuber that creates a lot of different types of deck lists. They're incredible. If you really want to get back into the game, I definitely recommend checking out their channel because I was a Pendulum player. I stopped playing Pendulum for a bit, and then I came back when I saw this deck list. I really enjoyed it, and I really wanted to play it. So let's talk about Pendulum cards. Now, a Pendulum monster is basically both a monster and a spell card. You can play them in either your main monster zone, or you can play them in your spell and trap zone, and they have effects for wherever you place them on the field. They're very interesting. They're very weird little monsters, and they're very spammy. You can pretty much summon a whole bunch of them right off the bat, but a big problem with this deck is overextending. Sometimes novice players will play out their entire hand, and then, you know, next turn, if the board is wiped or the game state changes in a drastic way, you pretty much have no cards to respond. But if you're able to change the board state in a way that benefits you, there's a lot of recursion. You can add a lot of cards back to hand. You can draw a lot of cards. You can search for a lot of cards. So it's a really great deck. You just pretty much have to not overextend. Sometimes you really want to, and trust me, you really, really want to, but it is not the best play. And sometimes it's just better to hold a few cards in your hand and wait out for another turn. So we're going to talk about the deck and get into the deck list right now. So our starter cards are basically Abyss Actor, Curtain Raiser, and Performapal, Skullcrobat, Joker. Abyss Actor, you could basically play it in your Spell and Trap zone, and then it can be special summoned from your Spell and Trap zone to the main monster zone if there's no other monsters on the field. This is great because you basically get a free special summon for your early turns. It becomes a little clunkier later. You might not want it in your hand towards the latter half of games, but sometimes, you know, it's interesting because I've had moments where my opponent has really strong monsters, and sometimes I won't have anything on the board and no way to respond to that monster, other than just kind of normal summoning out Abyss Actor or having it go from like the Spell and Trap field and special summoning it. So it comes up pretty frequently. It's just kind of an odd card because it doesn't really fit with the rest of the Magicians, and you can't really search it. So you kind of just have to draw into it, and sometimes it's really inconvenient when you do draw into it. But overall, it's a really great card. I really like it. It's got some downsides, but it's a necessary evil for this deck. Then you have Performapal, Skullcrobat, Joker. This card is super great. It basically allows you to search out any of the Magicians in your deck and any Performapal monster, which comes up a little bit later. Your opponent, more than likely, when they see this card, they are going to play a hand trap on sight. Hand traps like Ash Blossom restrict your ability to add a card to your hand. So sometimes this card kind of comes in handy because if you're a big brain player, you can normal summon it, try to activate its effect, let them play out their hand trap, and then start doing the rest of your combo. So they get very caught up early on with like you adding one card to your hand that they are not paying attention to the rest of your combo, and you can kind of start winning the game right from there. It's an incredible card. It really forces your opponent to think about whether or not they want to get rid of it, but it has a lot of great uses, especially if you're looking for cards like Performapal Monkey Board, which you play one of in your deck, but since Skullcrobat can search it, it basically allows you to set your scales on the field immediately. This is an excellent card, and I really love playing it in the deck. It works really well with a whole host of Pendulum monsters, and, you know, even if you don't want to add Performapal Monkey Board, it's really great for adding in cards like Wisdom Eye, or adding in cards like Double Iris Magician, or even adding Harmonizing Magician if you don't draw into any of these cards. It's incredible. I really do love this card. The next card that we're going to go into is Wisdom Eye Magician. Wisdom Eye Magician is really useful because when you're setting scales on the field, and we'll talk about like what setting scales means a little bit later on. I'll show you a practice duel so you kind of have a concept of what it means. This card is really good for essentially setting your scales. You basically play another Pendulum Magician in one of the other scales, or you can even play Wisdom Eye Magician in the other scales and its effect will still activate, and basically it can pop itself and search out any of your other magicians. So if you need a low scale for turn, you can use it to get Oath Dragon Magician into your Spell and Trap zone, or if you need a high scale, you can use it to get Double Iris Magician into your Spell and Trap zone. This card is super great for just being able to set your scales and allowing you to pretty much summon your whole host of Pendulum Magicians all at once. The pendulum mechanic allowing you to just like rush out cards is super great, but like I said before too, you got to be a little bit careful, because if you overplay and overextend the amount of cards on your field, if there's a board wipe or a trap, sometimes it is very detrimental to your game state. So just pay attention. Look out for people when they set spells and traps. Make sure that, you know, you're not getting completely screwed out of the game. Harmonizing Magician is also another great card. Harmonizing Magician basically allows you to special summon another monster on the field. So, well, special summon another magician monster onto the field. So it's really great because when you're going into either your link plays or your synchro plays, you can pretty much search out all of your magicians, and then, you know, after it's used as a material, that card gets banished, but, you know, it's still really great. Harmonizing Magician itself is a tuner monster, so it makes going into synchros a lot easier. And then we have one of the other great cards in this deck, which is Double Iris Magician. Basically, you set it in your spell and trap zone, you want to destroy this card from your spell and trap zone, and you have kind of a numerous ways to actually do this. You can do it through like Baron de Flor, or you can even do it through TG Wonder Magician, just so that you break the card, and then you can pretty much look up your Star Pendulum Graph or your Time Pendulum Graph. Star Pendulum Graph, basically when you put it in your spell and trap zone, it allows you to add any magician to hand if another magician is destroyed or leaves your monster zone. So, you know, if you're doing a lot of weird summoning and popping, this card just gives you an extra value. And then Time Pendulum Graph is great removal. It can also pop your Double Iris Magician on the field too, so that you can actually get out Star Pendulum Graph. So sometimes it's really great to go into Time Pendulum Graph first, because it basically gives you a free pop on your side of the field and on your opponent's side of the field. And it has some weird timing moments that I can't really describe without getting into a lot of semantics, but it's a great card anyways. But yeah. Then we have some other cards in this deck that are pretty good. We could talk about Astrograph Sorcerer and Chronograph Sorcerer. So basically, if any of your pendulum monsters die on your side of the field, you can just pretty much summon these cards right from your hand to the field and special summon other additional monsters from your hand to the field. Like I said before, worry about overextending, but if you really feel like you can push this out, definitely do it. Just because these are kind of high leveled monsters, so if you need to go into like your synchro plays, Chronograph is a level 6 monster and usually you have level 4, so bringing out cards like Baron de Flor is pretty easy with this card in mind. Astrograph is also just a big beat stick. This card is can kind of go in for game. It does a lot of damage, and it's pretty easy to get out there. So definitely really great to have. Other cards are basically just for utility. Artifact Scythe, for example, you basically use the TG Wonder Magician to pop this card and stop your opponent from playing the game. It's a very scummy card. I really wish that Artifact Scythe was completely banned, but since it's in the format and Pendulum has a really easy time accessing it, there's no reason not to actually play the card. Other than that, we have Black Fang Magician. This is another really great beater card. I love this card. Basically, you kind of use it if a monster is too strong on your side of the field. A lot of the Pendulum Magicians are pretty weak, so they get outed pretty easily. But, you know, Black Fang Magician can kind of come in there, punch something, and then leave. Or it can be used to basically stop one of your opponent's monsters from killing one of your monsters by having the opponent's monsters attack points. Really great for just kind of protecting your board as well. White Wing Magician is just there for synchro plays. It's a good tuner card, but it doesn't really do anything else. Overall, it's a okay card. You only play one of it. Performapal Celestial Magician is a great card because it kind of protects your Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Pendulum monsters in weird ways. Really great for late game, essentially setting it as your high scale pendulum. That's the card you want to put it as. Performapal Pendulum Sorcerer. This card's good because you can kind of search it from a variety of ways. You can search it off of Skull Crobat. You can search it off of Duelist Alliance, and it's pretty easy to search overall. I don't really use it as much. It's got a cool effect, but it's definitely not one of my favorite cards. I feel like I
I don't use it as much as people say that they do, but it's pretty cool. It's got the effect that if this card is special summon, you can target up to 2 cards you control, destroy them, and if you do, add Performapal monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, except Performapal Pendulum Sorcerer. So basically, like, you can use it to, I guess, pop Double Iris Magician and get a Performapal monkey board, but I don't really use it that much. If you have like Skull Crobat Joker, it's kind of already defeated, and since you're playing like 3 of those, you're pretty much guaranteed to see this card most of the time, so it's okay. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Then we have Purple Poison Magician. This card is great for making your opponent hesitant to attack your board. You can set this card face down, your opponent runs into it, and then it destroys their card right on sight. Really good for kind of striking a little bit of fear into your opponent. It makes them a little uncomfortable to actually attack into your monsters, because they probably think you're playing more of this, but you're actually only playing 1. You can also use it to basically buff some of your other spellcaster monsters, so it is a very good card overall. Anyways, also real quick, Time Gazer Magician, with the effect of Chronograph Sorcerer, if Chronograph Sorcerer is in your Pendulum Zone, you can actually destroy the card and then special summon Time Gazer Magician or use it as a scale. So sometimes what you want to do is, if you want to bring out Chronograph Sorcerer, if it's in your extra deck, you can basically pop the card itself, destroying it from your Pendulum Zone, summon out Time Gazer Magician into the Spell and Trap Zone, and then use the Pendulum Summoning mechanic to bring the Chronograph Sorcerer onto the field. Or you can just use it as an extra body. You can just pop the Chronograph Sorcerer and add this card to the field, just in case you need it for those early game turns when you're trying to basically link climb with any of the link monsters that we play in the deck. We play 2 Tuning Magicians. I was going to limit this to 1, but you know, sometimes it's actually kind of useful, because if you're doing link climbing, you can basically get it from using Crystron, Halki, Fibrax, and you can also get it from, I think, Celine as well. It's a pretty great card. You can use it to make Astrograph Sorcerer and Tuning Magician. If you synchro summon them, you can get Borreload Savage Dragon, great for that. But yeah, I play 2 of them just because of the special summoning effect. It gives you another body to use for any of the link summoning stuff, so it's pretty useful. I thought that I was only going to play it at 1. Most of the decks I've seen before have only played it at 1, but you know, 2 is kind of a good number because it means that you won't see it as frequently. I just hate drawing into this card. It's such an annoyance when you draw into it, but it's necessary for the deck itself. Duelist Alliance is just another searcher card. It allows you to search out 1 pendulum monster or pendulum spell and trap. So that means that you can summon out Performapal's Pendulum Sorcerer if you need another body. Or you can get Star Pendulum Graph or Time Pendulum Graph if you have any issues. Also Pendulum Call. Pendulum Call is pretty cool too. This is another searcher card. The one downside it has is it basically prevents you from popping your scales, and like we said before, it's kind of useful sometimes with Double Iris Magician. You want to destroy your scales just so that you can grab any of your Time Pendulum Graph cards, or you know, other effects too, where you might need a different pendulum monster in your scales at a different point in time. It's hard to get rid of those monsters when you have Pendulum Call in the field, so you play 2 just because it has a nice searcher effect, but it prevents plays like Wisdom Eye Magician from going off, so sometimes it's not really the best card you want to play. I thought it was really great before, but now I'm a little bit more. And then Oath Dragon Magician is the last card. This basically lets you add to your hand any monster from the extra deck. Well, any Pendulum monster, Magician monster from the extra deck. So Pendulum monsters have this weird thing that instead of going to the graveyard like normal monsters do, they basically end up in your extra monster zone. So you can, in your extra deck, which then you can use your Pendulum mechanic to summon them to the extra monster zone or your main monster zone. And on top of that, you can basically add back cards from the extra monster deck with Oath Dragon Magician. Really great card. So we'll get into some of the extra deck choices right now. We play a whole bunch of link cards. So we play Beyond the Pendulum. Basically what you would want to do is, it's the new Electromite. It's kind of a weird card. It's got some weird timing things, but the main thing is that you want to essentially have 2 monsters on the field, link climb into Beyond the Pendulum, get whatever pendulum card you want using its effect, and then you're forced immediately to pendulum summon, or else you can't activate monster effects for the rest of the turn. So you have to make sure you kind of do it in that order. This is another one of those cards like Performapal, Skull Crobat Joker that gets negated on sight. So sometimes you can use it to bait out hand traps in case you want to do other things with your combos. Definitely recommend it. Beyond the Pendulum really catches people off guard sometimes. After that, we've got Artifact Dagda. You want to play this right away too, because it basically lets you set Artifact Scythe right away. Then you can play out cards like Crystron Halki Fibrax, which lets you link climb into cards like Selene and then Appaloosa or Access Code Talker. Or alternatively, you can use it to pop itself and banish itself to play out TG Wonder Magician on your opponent's turn. Then you destroy Artifact Scythe to prevent your opponent from activating their cards. And then with the level 5 monster on the field, you can kind of go into, if you have like a Time Gazer mission, you can go into Borreload Savage Dragon. And you can also, I don't think you can go into, for a second, I was going to say that you can go into Baron de Fleur, but I'm pretty sure that's not. Oh, wait, no, it is. Next turn, you basically could use it to TG Wonder Magician and Artifact Scythe to go into Baron de Fleur. It's a very interesting card. So definitely keep one of those Crystron Halki Fibrax in the deck. You don't need more than that. One is good enough. But yeah, it's a great card. Honestly, I don't really use Dark or Artemis as much as I want to. I don't see the necessity in the deck, other than sometimes, with Appaloosa, since its effect basically says like, oh, it gets more attack if there's more link monsters on the field. Sometimes you could just link away one of your pendulum monsters to essentially make this card a lot stronger. And same thing with Access Code Talker. Basically, the idea is it's just to link out these monsters just to buff these two cards out a little bit more. Appaloosa basically just negates things on the field at the cost of losing attack points. If you use more link monsters to summon it, it gets a lot stronger by like 800 points based on the I believe the link number. So like this is a link 2, so it would get 1600 if it was used. It's a weird thing, but it's a very good card. I really like this. Link materials used for its link summon. Oh, link materials, sorry. So yeah, just if it's like link materials, so if you use any of these cards, it becomes a lot stronger. Access Code Talker basically gets stronger by banishing one of your cards from the graveyard. So any of these link monsters, if they get banished, it basically can banish that card and then get its like times 1000 attack depending on its link rating. So for example, Appaloosa would be a link rating of 4 since it has like the link 4 in the bottom right corner of its thing. This would be like a link rating of 2. So this card with Dark would get like 2000 additional attack points. So this would be like 4,300. But with a card like Appaloosa with a link rating of 4, this card can get big at 6,300. It's very, very powerful. And it can also be used to kind of wipe your opponent's board. It can banish a lot of monsters on the field by banishing, different link monsters in the graveyard or on the field. So sometimes you could just wipe the entire board with all the cards here, and if this doesn't kill, you can banish it too to also banish one more monster on the field and then kill with literally anything else in this deck. It's insane. Baguska is great. This is an Xyz monster that basically just stops your opponent's moves if you brick. So if you don't have a lot of great cards in your hand early on, you can kind of play out Baguska to stop your opponent's plays early on. Tornado Dragon just pops spell and traps. If you're afraid that they might have a reaction trap or any type of spell, you just use this to pop their back row. Time Star Magician, you use it to basically search out any of your magician cards, any of your dark spellcasters, and it has like an effect that comes up once in a while. It says once per turn, if a Pendulum monster card is in your monster zone or Pendulum zone would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can send one spellcaster monster from your deck to the graveyard instead. That effect comes up. I don't see it very often, but it does come up occasionally. It's pretty decent, and it's a really good protection. But because you're kind of comboing with a lot of these other cards, it doesn't always pop up. And finally, we have like the Divine Arsenal Zeus. If you attack with any of these Xyz monsters, you slap Zeus on top of it, and it's just a board wipe. It's an insane card. Like, if you're not playing Zeus, I don't know what you're doing. It's really cheap right now, at like $10-15 Really great card. Definitely recommend it overall. We talked about TG Wonder Magician's used to basically pop Scythe, but it can also be used to pop your Double Iris Magician in scale, so that you can bring out like Star Pendulum Graph or Time Pendulum Graph. Very good card overall. Borreload Savage Dragon is just your obvious negation. You play it on the field, it prevents your opponent from playing the game. That's what it does. Nothing else. And then we have Baron de Fleur. This is another pop, so again, like we talked about before, Double Iris Magician or Scythe, you can, you know, get those out. Well, I don't think Scythe actually, because I don't think this can activate on your opponent's turn. Yeah, no. But it can also negate, which is really great, and we love it. Baron de Fleur is a great card overall. So yeah, that's the card by card breakdown, and we will look at kind of how the deck is played, and we'll talk a little bit about like pendulum summoning and the mechanic in the Master Duel portion of this video. So real quickly, let's talk about some of the weaknesses that the Pendulum Magician's deck has. So anything that kind of destroys spell and trap cards really hurts the Pendulum deck strategy. Harpy's Feather Duster, which removes all spell and traps from your opponent's side of the field, really kills this deck, especially because it kills scales and then any protection that you might have from Time Pendulum Graph. Anti-Spell Fragrance really hurts the deck too, because pendulum cards cannot be set. They have to be summoned directly to the field. So you can't flip them face down and then flip them up like any other spell cards under Anti-Spell Fragrance. So you can't activate any of your effects from the pendulum zones. Other cards that really hurt the deck too include any Floodgates. There can only be one really hurts the deck because you play a lot of Spellcaster type monsters, and Summon Limit hurts the deck because you need to special summon a lot of things, and with that in effect, you can't really play the game at all. Other big cards that hurt the deck include any of the main ones like Dimensional Barrier and Mystic Mine. Dimensional Barrier basically preventing you from accessing your extra deck, which is where all of your strong monsters are, and then Mystic Mine just being a horribly designed card that nobody likes and should be deleted from this game forever. So we're going to take a quick look at this Pendulum deck that I've built for Master Duel. It doesn't have the exact same like extra deck at all. It retains some of the cards used in my other deck, specifically cards like Access Code Talker and Appaloosa and Celine and Crystron Halki Fibrax, but it's a bit different. You can see this because we have like cards like Evil Swarm Nightmare and Baguska, but for the most part, this is basically like what a Pendulum deck looks like. Master Duel has a different rule set when it comes to the actual ban list. So like you can see like Harmonizing is at 2 here, but in the actual TCG side of things, it's going to be like free. It's unlimited on the ban list. There's 3 cards available at all time. But since I just want to show you how the deck and its mechanic works, we're just going to get into like a test duel from the Master Duel solo mode. So we're going to look at the pendulum mechanic from here. Hopefully I don't brick. I tried recording this a few times and I managed to brick almost every time, which is incredible. So already we kind of have a decent hand here. We have Oath Dragon Magicians and we have a Wisdom Eye Magician. Since we have 2 Oath Dragons, what we could do is activate the effects of Pendulum Call. Like I said before, this card can be a little bricky, but you know, screw it. We're going to just get rid of the Oath Dragon Magician and grab 2 cards to hand. So from here, what we want to do is grab a Dragon Pit Magician and a Harmonizing Magician and add them both to our hand. Does this need to be destroyed? If you control no monsters, you can... Okay, no. So basically what we're going to do here is, like I said before with Abyss Actor, this card's really good for acquiring resources early because it can be a great starter card to just bring out a free monster to the field, and you can see like its double effect. It doubles its attack since there's no monsters on the board. Then we could like normal summon a monster like this. So we have 2 monsters already on the board, and then we can set our pendulum scales. Like I said before, it isn't technically setting a card because we're talking about setting. That means like to face it down on the field. It's basically placing a card face up in the spell or trap zone. So we have like 2 cards face up in the spell or trap zone. We're gonna do the quick pendulum summon. So when you have 2 cards in the pendulum zones, they have different scales. These are like these little numbers on the side. It's kind of hard to see, especially on these cards, but they're represented here. So this Oath Dragon would be considered like a low scale. He has a 2 as his scale number, and then we have Dragon Pit Magician, which has an 8 as his scale number. He would be considered a high scale. So pretty much I can activate this thing. It's a special mechanic for pendulum cards that lets me special summon as many monsters as I want in my hand, or at least between the levels of 2 and 8. So I can basically summon anything like a level 3 monster, a level 4 monster, a level 5 monster, a level 6 monster, a level 7 monster, but that's it. I can't summon anything else from that. But we have a level 4 monster in hand. As you can see, it's got 4 stars, so we could pendulum summon this. This also counts as a form of special summoning, so this is why it gets limited by summon limit. But you know, we can bring out Harmonizing Magician, activate its effect to grab another card to hand, and then we could summon just another one. So that's basically what pendulum summoning is. One of the other cool things about pendulum summoning is that basically when a monster on the field dies or gets destroyed, it goes to the extra deck. And so when you pendulum summon, you can actually pendulum summon monsters from the extra deck into like the extra monster zone, or into arrows that link monsters. Like, let's try to bring one out. So into like the arrows of link monsters like Electromite over here. He has arrows going here and arrows going here. So yeah, that's pretty much pendulum summoning in a nutshell. I hope to create some more content. I really want to teach you guys a little bit more about like Yu-Gi-Oh and how it functions. I actually kind of messed up there, but don't worry about that. I'm just doing this as like a practice duel. But I hope you really like the content. I put in a lot of work to produce this video. And if you liked it, remember to like, subscribe, and follow the channel. I'll be producing more content in the future. I've been meaning to do this for a while, and I think that kind of turning it into like, I guess like a vlog style channel is kind of going to help me produce a little bit more content. I don't know if I'm going to be doing it daily or weekly. Right now I feel like it's probably going to be weekly, maybe bi-weekly, because there's a lot of work just on this video alone. But yeah, I hope to see you guys soon. Peace.